The first thing most of us touch in the morning isn't a lover, a book, or even our own breath. It's a phone, a glowing rectangle that demands, consumes, and commands. We scroll before we even stand. Notifications drip like intravenous lines. Screens whisper promises of connection, entertainment, distraction, validation. But behind the glow, something darker grows. Fatigue, anxiety, emptiness. You know this cycle. The dopamine spike of a like, the compulsion to check a message that wasn't even urgent, the phantom vibration that makes you reach for a device that never buzzed. This isn't connection. It's captivity. We call it convenience, but it feels more like a cage. Studies in 2025 call it digital addiction. But the word addiction doesn't fully capture the quiet devastation. It's not just time wasted, it's life dissolved. Focus becomes fractured, attention span shredded, the silence of solitude replaced by endless noise. And maybe the most painful part, we call this normal. We tolerate this flood as if it were inevitable. We convince ourselves that the glowing blue light is simply the cost of being alive today. But at what cost? Think about it. When was the last time you were fully present in a moment without the itch to record it? When did you last let a thought run its full course, uninterrupted by a ping, a scroll, a swipe? When did silence last feel like silence instead of withdrawal? We are drowning in what we once thought would save us. The internet was supposed to connect us. Instead, it devours us. Social media was supposed to make us seen. Instead, it makes us addicted to being seen. This is the epidemic of our age. Not a virus of the body, but a hunger of the soul. And so, naturally, we look for cures. We download another app to limit our apps. We buy books on digital detox. We set timers, uninstall platforms, switch to grayscale mode, declare no screen Sundays. Sometimes they help. Most times they don't. Because the problem is not the phone. The problem is us. Our inability to master our own attention. Our desperation for stimulation, validation, escape. We keep searching for modern solutions to a modern sickness. But what if the cure isn't modern at all? What if the wisdom we need isn't buried in the App Store, but in the words of men who walked the streets of Athens 2,000 years ago? It sounds absurd. How could Plato, who never touched a screen, know anything about our compulsive scrolling? How could Epicurus, who never saw a notification, guide us in silencing them? How could Diogenes, who lived in a barrel, have anything to say about Instagram? And yet, they can. Because while technology is new, the human struggle isn't. Distraction, excess, vanity, the hunger for more, these are not inventions of Silicon Valley. They are ancient wounds, and the Greeks spent their lives dissecting them. This video is not about deleting your apps. It's about confronting the truth the Greeks already knew. You cannot be free until you master yourself. The question is no longer whether we can survive without our phones. The question is whether we can survive ourselves. And that is where the Greeks enter, not as relics of history, but as surgeons of the soul.
When you hear the word philosophy, maybe you picture dusty books, marble statues, classrooms where professors debate abstractions no one understands. But in its birth, philosophy wasn't about theories. It wasn't about winning arguments or building academic careers. It was about one raw question: how do we live? Ancient Greece was not a paradise. It was chaos in its own right. Wars, corruption, inequality, broken politics, human vanity, lust, greed, fear. Different time, different tools, same restless human heart. And so the Greeks searched for something beyond survival. They searched for a way to master life itself. For them, philosophy was not entertainment, it was medicine. Not a textbook, but a treatment. Not speculation, but survival. We think digital addiction is unique to us, but the Greeks would recognize it immediately, even without screens. They would see in our endless scrolling the same restless hunger they warned about, the craving for distraction, the addiction to appearances, the slavery to desires we do not master. Plato wrote about shadows on the cave wall, illusions mistaken for reality. Today, we call it Instagram. Epicurus spoke of simple pleasures bringing serenity, while false desires enslave us. Today, we call them push notifications. Diogenes mocked society's obsession with status, fame, and possessions. Today, we call it social media validation. The tools changed, the wounds remained. That's why ancient philosophy still matters, because beneath all the noise of modern life, the human condition hasn't evolved. We still chase the same illusions. We still confuse distraction with meaning, quantity with quality, noise with truth. Philosophy, for the Greeks, wasn't a luxury for the elite. It was a daily practice, a discipline of the mind, a way of purifying the soul from the chaos outside. They treated wisdom like a shield. Without it, life would tear you apart. With it, even the storms could be endured. And if philosophy was their shield against war, power, lust, corruption, why not against our screens? The same shield can be lifted again. But here's the paradox. We resist it. We want quick fixes, dopamine hacks, new apps, productivity tricks. The Greeks demand something harder. They ask you to ask the only question that matters. Who are you when the noise stops? Maybe that's why their wisdom feels so threatening, because it doesn't promise escape. It promises confrontation. It doesn't say, delete your distractions. It says, look at why you need them in the first place. This is the medicine we avoid, because it doesn't taste sweet, it burns. But the Greeks knew, medicine that doesn't burn never heals. So here we are, in the most connected age of history, and yet one of the most lost. And maybe the voices we need are not the influencers of today, but the philosophers of 2,000 years ago. In the chapters to come, we'll walk with them. We'll stand with Socrates, who forces us to examine the lives we numb with screens. We'll sit with Epicurus, who whispers that freedom is not having more, but needing less. And we'll confront Diogenes, who spits in the face of our desperate hunger to be liked, followed, seen. They are not here to comfort us. They are here to expose us, and maybe to free us.
Socrates never wrote a single book. He left no text, no system, no grand monument to his own genius. What he left was something far more dangerous, a method, a way of asking questions that pierced through illusions, pretenses, and lies. He walked the streets of Athens, approaching strangers, leaders, artisans, anyone who claimed to know. And with nothing but questions, he undid them. What is justice? What is courage? What is the good life? Questions simple enough to be dismissed and yet powerful enough to expose the truth. Most people lived without ever truly thinking. And for that crime, for the crime of exposing illusions, he was sentenced to death. Now imagine Socrates walking among us today, not in the agora of Athens, but in the endless feed of our screens. He would not ask about justice first. He would not ask about courage. He would ask you this: why are you scrolling? It seems harmless, even absurd, but look at the weight behind it. Why do you reach for your phone the moment silence arrives? Why do you need the noise, the flicker, the feed? What hunger are you trying to silence by never being silent yourself? Socrates would not blame the technology. He would not declare phones evil or demand abstinence. He would simply show you, as he showed the Athenians, that distraction is not neutral. It is avoidance. It is escape. It is, in the deepest sense, cowardice. Because to sit in silence, to be with yourself, is to confront the life you are actually living. And perhaps that is the fear at the heart of digital addiction, not missing out on the world, but facing ourselves. Socrates' most famous words still cut like a blade. The unexamined life is not worth living. On the surface, it sounds dramatic, but think about it in the age of distraction. What is a life spent half present, half absent? What is a life where attention is stolen by every flicker of a screen? What is a life so unexamined that you never notice it slipping away? In that sense, the digital age has given us exactly what Socrates warned against: not death, but a living sleep. A life without examination. A life not truly lived. His cure wasn't complicated. It wasn't a detox plan. It wasn't a productivity hack. It was the courage to question, relentlessly. To stop letting appearances, shadows on the wall, pass for truth. To examine not the world first, but yourself. And maybe that is the most terrifying act of all. To put the phone down, not because you must, but because you dare. To let silence return, and in that silence, hear the questions you've been avoiding. Who am I without the feed? What do I fear in the pause? What do I actually want from my one fragile life? Socrates drank poison rather than betray the truth. And we betray the truth every time we choose noise over reflection. But maybe his death can be our alarm. Maybe his courage can be our confrontation. Maybe the Socratic method isn't just a tool of philosophy, but the beginning of freedom. Asking the one question that shatters the trance. Not what's new online, but why do I need it so badly?
If Socrates teaches us to question, Epicurus teaches us to simplify. In an age where every moment is interrupted by alerts, banners, and reminders of things we never asked for, Epicurus's voice reaches across centuries with something almost scandalous in its clarity. Pleasure is found in simplicity, not in stimulation. Epicurus is often misunderstood. Modern ears hear Epicurean and think of indulgence, fine wine, endless banquets, luxury at every turn. But this is not what he meant. For Epicurus, the highest pleasure was not found in excess, but in peace. His goal was ataraxia, freedom from unnecessary pain, anxiety, and disturbance. Now compare that to digital life. Every ping on your phone is a promise of micro-pleasure, a like, a message, a new headline. But these are not true pleasures. They are stimulations that awaken desire but rarely deliver satisfaction. And worse, they leave behind restlessness, a craving that demands to be fed again and again. Epicurus would see this clearly. He would remind us that the pursuit of endless stimulation is not the path to happiness, it is the path to exhaustion. Instead, he would guide us to distinguish between necessary pleasures and vain ones. Necessary pleasures are those that sustain life, friendship, reflection, and joy in simple things. Vain pleasures are those that create more need than fulfillment, the kind of desires that, once fed, only grow hungrier. Think of scrolling late into the night. Do you ever stop after an hour and feel nourished? Or do you feel emptier than when you began, with time lost and sleep stolen? Epicurus would call this a vain pursuit, a false pleasure that masquerades as joy but leaves you weaker. His cure is not to reject pleasure, but to redefine it, to return to the essentials: food that nourishes, conversations that deepen, moments of quiet that allow the mind to breathe. Imagine if, instead of seeking endless novelty online, you let yourself rediscover the sweetness of simplicity: a walk without your phone, a meal shared without distraction, a thought followed to its end without interruption. Epicurus would say, here is where real pleasure hides, in what is enough. The joy of disconnection is not about denying yourself, but about remembering that the richest moments of life require no device to exist.
If Epicurus whispers of simplicity, Diogenes shouts it. While Epicurus sought peace in gardens, Diogenes made the streets his home, living with nothing but a cloak, a staff, and a jar. He mocked society's obsessions with wealth, status, and comfort, and in doing so, he exposed their absurdity. Now picture Diogenes in our time. Would he have a smartphone? Would he chase followers, likes, or notifications? Or would he laugh at us, carrying a broken device in his pocket only to use it as a mirror of our dependence? Diogenes' life was not a rejection of pleasure, but of illusion. He believed that freedom begins where false needs end. Every chain of desire for recognition, for applause, for possessions was to him a form of slavery. And isn't this the same slavery we experience when we can't stop checking our screens, when our moods rise and fall with digital approval? To live like Diogenes is not to abandon society altogether, but to confront it. He forced Athens to see its contradictions by refusing its norms. Imagine applying this today, not as performance, but as personal rebellion. To say no, not to pleasure, but to manipulation. To step outside the invisible rules that say you must always be available, always connected, always consuming. Diogenes carried a lantern in daylight, claiming to search for an honest man. What if we carried his lantern now, searching instead for honest attention? Attention unbought by algorithms, unbroken by interruptions. Would we find it in ourselves? The courage of refusal is rare. It feels dangerous to step away when everyone else is leaning in. But Diogenes reminds us, true freedom begins the moment we stop being embarrassed to live differently. The day you put your phone down in public without fear of missing out, without shame of seeming disconnected, you touch the kind of radical independence that made him unbreakable. Diogenes would tell us, stop being fed and start being free. Because only in refusal do you remember what was yours all along: your time, your mind, your life. We began with a flood. The endless notifications, the unbroken feed, the constant hum of digital life that never rests. We saw it consume attention, fracture focus, steal presence. We named it, measured it, feared it. And now, we step into the other side. not with instructions, not with a program, not with a checklist, but with the quiet, ancient voices of those who understood the human soul better than any algorithm ever could. Socrates confronts us first. He reminds us that the true enemy isn't the screen, it is avoidance. The avoidance of thought, the avoidance of truth, the avoidance of ourselves. Every compulsive scroll is a small rebellion against presence. Every ping that pulls you from silence is a subtle imprisonment. Socrates asks, do you dare face the life beneath distraction? Do you dare examine it, fully and without excuse? Epicurus follows, not with challenge, but with invitation. He shows that liberation does not require destruction, renunciation, or punishment. It requires discernment. Pleasure, he whispers, is not infinite. It is rooted in the essentials: friendship, contemplation, nature, simplicity. The noise of excess, the hunger for constant stimulation, these are not pleasures, they are illusions, ephemeral and draining. Epicurus asks, will you let the trivial suffocate the profound? Will you allow constant hunger to blind you to true nourishment? And then Diogenes steps forward, wild and unyielding. He does not negotiate, he does not explain, he exposes. You are enslaved not by your devices, but by your own consent. You chase recognition, approval, affirmation. You live within invisible cages you built yourself. Diogenes dares you to refuse, not out of fear or moral duty, but out of courage. To refuse is not to withdraw, it is to reclaim sovereignty. And here is the paradox. The cure is neither sudden nor simple. It is not a reset button. It is not a program you can follow. It is the ongoing confrontation with your own mind. It is the patience to sit in silence, not as punishment, but as revelation. It is the discipline to see what is necessary, what is vain, and what is destructive. It is the courage to live honestly in a world that constantly demands distraction. The Greeks do not promise you freedom. They illuminate it. Freedom is not given, it is claimed. It is not a reward, it is a practice. It is the deliberate act of noticing where your attention drifts, tracing the currents that pull you from yourself, and deciding moment by moment that you will not be taken. The digital flood remains. Notifications will buzz, feeds will scroll, the world will insist on your attention. But within you, a new space opens. A space that Socrates dared you to examine, Epicurus dared you to simplify, and Diogenes dared you to claim. This space is not perfect, it is not permanent, it is a practice, a confrontation, a vigilance. And in it lies what all screens and apps, all followers and likes, all endless consumption cannot give: presence, attention, self-possession. The cure is not a tool. It is the courage to see, the discipline to choose, the strength to endure. It is the art of living consciously, moment by moment, even in the hum of a world that refuses stillness. And perhaps, in that quiet confrontation with yourself, you will finally remember. Life, examined and intentional, is the only life truly lived. If this moved something inside you, stay. We're building something for those who don't fake it. Subscribe, not just for the content, but for the confrontation. And if this left a wound, maybe it was meant to. Sometimes the best way to go deeper is to share the pain. Share it. Someone out there still believes the cure is an app, still thinks silence is a void to escape,
still confuses stimulation with life. This won't solve that hunger, but it might show why it never ends. Let this reach the ones drowning in the flood, mistaking noise for connection. Let it remind them, attention is not stolen, it's surrendered. And you can take it back.